Hello guys, welcome back to another Carnivore Team GB live Q&A with myself, Ben, Richard, Phil and Lee. So today we're going to be doing something a bit different to what we usually do. So it'll still be a Q&A kind of session, so feel free to put your questions in the chat with a Q. But we're going to start arranging this in terms of different topics each time. So that way we can really refine the sort of questions we're getting, because I've noticed now after about 5 months of doing this, we get the same questions every single week. And I can pretty much predictably work out what they're going to be every week. And it's getting to the point where I'm like, it's not making the most use of the information that we have. And we've got a much broader knowledge spectrum than what I think some of you guys might realize. So in this talk today, it'll be obviously all of us speaking, but I'm pretty sure Ben and Phil will definitely have some good insights towards this one. So I'm going to put them to the center stage for probably most of the things, and especially the initial talk. But before we get into that, I'm going to be introducing a little a video just for, I guess, entertainment purposes. So watch about a minute of this one.
We built the pyramid a long time ago to illustrate how much people should eat of the 4 basic food groups. Sir, we abandoned the pyramid when Michelle Obama got involved. The pyramid doesn't work. We've already tried it.
It's upside down.
What?
Sir, the pyramid is upside down.
Turn the pyramid upside down.
You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top
Flip the damn food pyramid!
This is not FDA approved.
It's dinner time on the East Coast in 10 minutes. Now do it!
Sir, we've got a match. Nutrition is stabilizing. We've got a well-balanced vaccine, sir.
Get the president on the phone. Tell him to have some steak with his bun.
Steak with his.
There we go, guys. Brilliant. So that's the interlude into our talk today. Yes, there's plenty more clips like that. I think Lee brought that to my attention recently. I thought it'd be a bit of a good laugh. But yeah, just basically today is obviously Tuesday, and upcoming this week we do have Ben and Phil's fabulous War and Health event, which will be happening, I believe it's this weekend, hopefully. So we're going to sort of introduce that in kind of a talk, basically answer any questions related to that, food guidelines, what you guys think. Might get the conversation going a little bit in the chat, and it might give you some guys some useful insights. Anyway, just as a reminder, either Phil or Ben, do you have like a code or a link or something? And I can obviously chuck that in the chat, put it on the screen, and we can talk about all that kind of stuff, like what's happening this weekend.
Sure, Ben, do you want to go? But you know the code. There's a 50 quid. There's a 50 quid off code for booking, and I'm just going to say it's Richard because Stephen couldn't be asked to turn up, and so we're going to give it to Richard. But yeah, so Ben, you take it away. I'm just fiddling with my YouTube channel at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. Just type in Richard when you sign up. So you go to thebigfatchallenge.com/events, or just go to thebigfatchallenge.com. There's a button there for the War on Health tour Easter. Click on that and secure one of the last rooms. That's it, really.
I think it's also worth adding, gents, isn't it, that you've opened the weekend up to single days? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So if you can only make one day, just come along on one day, and lots and lots of food, and predominantly carnivore. But we've had to make slight concessions for the omnis on this one. We've possibly got one vegetarian coming along as well. But she's getting a room. No, she's getting a room only. She's only going to come and stay. She's not actually attending the conference. That's fine.
Oh, okay. We can win her over. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So come and meet Richard. Come and meet Ben. Come and meet me. It's a shame if we could just beam Jonathan and Lee, and that'd be fantastic. We've got Dr. Ahmad Malik
and Stephen, of course, and Stephen.
With Stephen, yeah, he's coming along on the Sunday. We've got Dr. Sarah Pugh, and we've got Anthony Scarborough with his amazing brain cancer reversal story. And I'm saying it anyway because I really love her.
And Jafia Clemens, no,
But she's on Zoom. I was coming to that. Who is my absolute hero? So she's joining from Hungary on Zoom with some incredible brain cancer stories from paleomedicina in Hungary, and also the problems she goes through with the crime of actually helping people to reverse this. And we've got some amazing people in the audience as well, and come and make some new friends. Come and hang out. We've also got Mary Ruddick coming down. She just said that she's going to change her flight from Singapore and drop in at Manchester Airport and come along for either 1 or 2 days. I'm not quite sure yet, on her way to Paris. But Mary Ruddick is great to chat to. She's the lady who was vegan, bedridden, fixed herself on carnivore, and now travels around all the indigenous tribes all over the world, north to south. And she's on my podcast, Red Pill Buddha's podcast. But all these guys are on my podcast, and it's linked. All those interviews are linked on that event page. But come down and hang out, and we'll. I'm looking for so many things I want to ask Mary as well. It's amazing she's turning up. She lives in America, and her experience of indigenous diets and blowing up all the nonsense of the food pyramid that we're talking about today, and all that sort of thing. And when you see what she's actually seen them eating, and it's nothing like we're told. And they don't die young. They don't have diseases. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Come along this weekend. Last chance to book, and it's going to be an amazing time. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Yeah. So if you guys do have any questions, please put them in the chat of a queue so we can spot them. Anyway, I was actually pretty curious just to see what's this? Daniel Barber said, "Are people here anti-vegan?" I'm anti-vegan, but I'm not anti-vegan people, if that makes sense. So I'm not really against people. It's more the movement in of itself. So you can do what you want, but it's more the propaganda that is espoused by the vegan cult that I'm not the best fan of. Speaking to hundreds of vegans, and admittedly, it's not the vegans that are the problem. It's not the people that are the problem. It's the diet. I'm sure you guys have probably had consults with hundreds of ex-vegans, and they're great people, most of them. The vast majority of them are great people, unless they've gone too far, in which case you can't really bring them back in some cases. But I'm certainly not anti-vegan. What about you guys?
No, I totally agree, because I'm an ex-vegan. I've got huge compassion for them.
Right,
it destroyed me.
We're done.
Yeah,
we're done, Phil, mate.
Actually, I identify as vegan. If that makes any difference.
Ben, sorry.
I identify as vegan.
Do you? Well, I identify as black and female.
I work and have done with lots of vegans.
Identify as an attack helicopter if you want to. But, we see so many ex-vegans who are very, very sick. Exactly as Jonathan said, the problem is veganism. I'll have a go at the doctors, who are promoting it, because they're not very well researched. They're really hurting people. But the vegans, no, they've been fooled. They see a couple of propaganda films, and it's very emotional. They go into it, they feel better in the honeymoon period, and then it all goes wrong. And it's the veganism that's the problem. It's not the vegans. I'm not at all into vegan bashing, but I'm very much into veganism bashing and Dr. Greger bashing.
Do you know what I've noticed is that I think vegans and us carnivores want the same thing. I think a vegan becomes a vegan for the right purposes. I think and I released a podcast that I recorded with Stephen recently on this. It's been one of my worst viewed podcasts, one of my most commented, but because YouTube works on a ratio of likes, it's at a low percentage of likes. Watch it if you get a chance, because I've published lots of information in there, and I've taken an incredibly unbiased approach, because I can relate to much of what a vegan is pursuing a vegan lifestyle for. And in my experience, we all love animals, we all care for the environment, and we all want to be fitter and healthier. It's just, unfortunately, much of the information supplied to and in the public domain is misinformation. it's we're led to believe that, you know, living a carnivore lifestyle is in fact cruel, where more animals are killed from living a vegan lifestyle. It's not healthy for you, and it's worse for the environment. You know, this whole thing about cows farting, damaging the ozone layer is absolutely preposterous when you look at a regenerative farming technique which actually sequesters carbon and is carbon negative. This is the only way forward in regards to healing and repairing the atmosphere and climate change. And when you look at the volume of animals that are killed in regards to crop production, it's astronomical. And so I'm not against vegans, and I agree with what Jonathan said. You know, I just think they are misinformed. Unfortunately, they're very aggressive. And again, this comes back to the neurotransmitters in the brain. We need specific compounds to create neurotransmitters. We need tyrosine, tryptophan, phenylalanine, and cofactors like vitamin B6, vitamin B3, vitamin B12, zinc, magnesium, iron, all of which are devoid in a vegan lifestyle. And I just find this. Take a look at the comments on there. There's lots of aggressive and angry comments. The information is the information, and I've been completely unbiased. I just hope that more people will pay attention to the information and make the changes necessary for health, well-being, and animal cruelty in the environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we go for some quick questions now because they're piling in already, which is quite interesting. One from Tom, great channel member of mine. Lee, can you tell us more about your job and your hobbies?
I mean, I just sort of said like this is a bit topic specific, so I didn't know if it was kind of a relevant question, but
it's completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant, but it might, you know, fit in somehow.
Catch up on one of my videos or something.
Yeah. What do you do as your job, and what are your hobbies anyway? Just quickly.
I clean windows. I'm just a window cleaner, and my hobbies they're pretty vast. To be honest, I play the piano, paint, I jump rope. I quite like editing. I like the whole process of editing. Anything creative. I'm just genuinely a creative person, so that's why I like all the arty type stuff.
Nice one. Excellent. Cheers for that. Right, next question. General minimum amount and general optimal amount of omega-3 we should consume every day on average. We're all going to struggle to answer this question. Maybe I'll give it to Phil first, see what he thinks.
Don't give me a scientific one, for God's sake. We got you, we got Richard, we got, you know, Lee. He probably knows way more than me. Ben does, definitely. I don't know, just eat animals. And if you want more omega-3s, eat lamb. If you want a shitload more omega-3s, eat some small oily fish. I don't know about an optimal amount. I think whatever your body tells you it needs. Maybe you need some more to start with if you've filled yourself full of seed oils. But let's have somebody who understands the science.
I'll jump in.
Go for it, man.
It's the wrong question. I apologize. There are some, not all omega-3s are the same. There are two that are very, very important, which are DHA and EPA. Bloody hell, I'm losing my EPA. They're 20 and 22 carbon ones. There's also alpha-linolenic acid, which is an 18 carbon. And that's also an omega-3. Now, what a lot of things say is, oh, there's loads of omega-3s in this. Now, some people can convert some, like a tiny amount of alpha-linolenic acid into DHA and EPA, but some can't. And it's even so, it's not very much if you can. So beware of packaging that says, oh, this has got loads of omega-3s in it, because quite honestly, we don't need much ALA in our diet at all. What you really want is DHA, which is great for building your brain and the myelination of the neurons in your brain. It helps prevent things like Alzheimer's and stuff as you age. And EPA is fantastic for the nervous system in particular as well. Both good for the brain, and both anti-inflammatory. I don't know about the anti-inflammatory properties of ALA though. So, but yeah, so you've got to be a little bit discriminatory. Not all omega-3s are the same.
Yeah, the conversion rate at best, if you've got that genetic polymorphism that allows you to convert ALA into usable omega-3 in a human biological appropriate way is something like 2 or 3%, and that's at best. So when you see, like, when you guys go to the shops, you go to Holland & Barrett, it's like, oh, omega-3 6 and 9, it might say flaxseed oil or something like that. At best, you'll get like a fraction of whatever's in there. But you get all the accompanied seed oil crap with it anyway, so it's a waste of money. So I think, like Phil said, just eat real food. I've got a bit more to say on that, but I'll pass the floor over to Rich to see what his thoughts are on optimal omega-3.
Completely. Well, in regards to range, I agree with Phil. As nature intended. But as Ben was saying, ALA from nuts and seeds is very low in bioavailability in the body. EPA, epicipentanoic, and DHA, docosahexaenoic, those are the ones that we need, and we can't get these from nuts and seeds. And the issue with nuts and seeds, and you mentioned flaxseed is incredibly high in cyanogenic glycoside, which breaks down into hydrocyanic acid, which becomes cyanide. 200 grams of flaxseed contains enough cyanide to kill a human being. So you don't want to be getting ALA from nuts and seeds. That's not to mention the phytic acid and lectins contained with them. Avoid nuts and seeds if you can. Eat oily fish. Don't supplement, because, again, the same as oxidized omega-6, omega-3s can become oxidized in as little as a few hours. Supplementation of omega-3s is not recommended. Get it from beef, lamb, your animal proteins, and probably the best source is mackerel, sardines, and salmon, probably in that order. Just be mindful that you don't get it. If you buy it in tins, make sure it's in brine or spring water. Avoid vegetable oils, and even avoid olive oil in cans, because olive oil can also oxidize over time. Olive oil is considerably better than omega-6s, but they can still oxidize. But in regards to the minimum amount, as much as you need, isn't it? Eat as nature intended.
Fair, yeah. Lee, what's your take on omega-3? Do you? I know you're not big on supplements, but
yeah, I believe it's really important. That's why I specifically, on a Friday or a Saturday, I make it a fish day. There is omega-3s, your DHA, EPA in meat. There's not loads of it in meat when you compare it to oily fish. You've got decent amounts in pastured eggs and stuff like that. But I specifically allocate my Friday and Saturday to having usually mackerel. I get wild mackerel. I sometimes, if I haven't got enough beef, I'll add eggs. But tin of sardines with you got the bones and you got calcium there as well. But yeah, I believe it's really important. 20% of the lipids, up to 20%, is made of DHA. I don't know whether we get enough potentially just eating red meat. I'm sure you're going to get a hell of a lot more than most people, though. People are eating they think like what you're saying, you get stuff from flaxseed and stuff like this. Some studies show less than 1% you're converting from ALA. And you're going to kill that just eating red meat. But if you're adding eggs and you have a bit of fish here and there, small or oily fish, that's the way to go. I don't think you need to measure or try and seek out the exact, just eat food and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, I agree. But lamb is definitely higher in omega-3.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, you're right. Yeah, agreed.
And I prefer lamb, actually, I have to say. So maybe I need some more omega-3s or something else that we haven't even discovered. And there was a quick question in there. I'm looking through and I can't find it again, so I don't know who asked, but somebody said, did Phil say Mary Ruddick's coming to the event? Yes, she is. Anyway, there we go.
Yeah, my take on omega-3 is a bit different to yours, just because I have experienced a tremendous benefit from supplementing with it. The only reasonable argument against omega-3 supplementation that I can think of is someone needs more of it, i.e. they have neurodiversity, they need more omega-3 in their brain, which is pretty inevitably always deficient in people that are neurodivergent. People that stare at screens all day, people that don't get much sunlight, people that don't eat much lamb, perhaps, they will require more omega-3. If you're sat in front of a screen all day like I am, you will require more omega-3, and that's a plain, simple fact. The problem with omega-3 is obviously the aldehyde toxicity, which is never measured. To measure the amount of aldehydes in omega-3 in a supplement is very expensive and not something you're going to be easily able to do. There's 2 products I do recommend which do the job, is in I use them, I notice a benefit, my joints feel better, my brain feels better. One of them is Barefoot Nutrition omega-3 oil, which is currently out of stock, handily. And the other one is Wiley's Peak EPA. They're both sourced from sardines, anchovies, and I think mackerel, but I might be wrong. They're the cleanest omega-3s that I've ever used, but like I said, the only problem that I can spot with them is they could contain aldehydes. But saying that, I have been using those sort of products or very similar ones to them for about 5 to 6 years, and I experienced no kind of defect or negative effect from it. So that's been my experience. But then again, if you're out and about all day, you can get some more sunlight. You know, you don't require more omega-3. I mean, if you don't get sunlight, you just do require more omega-3. I can't remember where I heard it. I think it's a Jack Cruz thing. But that's been my experience, absolutely. And there's some seasonality to it as well. Perhaps you need more oily fish, more fattier food in the winter months than the summer months. In terms of like eating locally, people historically would have eaten a bit more fruit perhaps in summer. They probably would have eaten more oily fish in the winter. That's just what I think. But I've spoken to a lot of neurodivergent people, and they all seem to have a diet very high in oily fish. That's an absolute mainstay in terms of the carnivore diet. That's my limited cohort in that experience. But outside of that, I wouldn't really advise for it. I wouldn't say it's like an absolute necessity. If you eat lamb, if you eat salmon, mackerel, sardines, you're pretty much good to go. But for some of us, it's not always the most palatable thing to do sometimes. But then again, you can't force it. You know, so sometimes if I, for example, think something's not right, I don't feel good, I'm not going to add omega-3 to my diet that day. I'll give it a week off or something. But that's been my weird experience. I think we've got Richard on now. I think he's sharing something.
Me unmute. That might help. Yeah, you don't have to jump on this now if you don't want to. I was just going to run through a little snippet of, and this is, if it's okay with Ben and Phil, these are some of the slides from the presentation that I'm going to run on Sunday. And I thought, you know, with their permission, if it was okay to show a couple, it may hopefully entice a few people to come along and watch the full presentation, which is full of information. So it's up to you guys. I can run through this really briefly.
Richard, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, definitely. No worries. Do what you like. Just one really quick thing on the omega-3s. I completely agree with Jonathan there. And if somebody comes to me with MS or some sort of neuro issue, definitely go and eat a load of fish. I agree with Jack Cruz on that hugely. So, yeah, if you've got some kind of neuro thing. Sorry, Richard, carry on. Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, so look, I've literally just thrown this together I've bastardized some of the presentation that I've been working tirelessly for you guys for Sunday. And it was basically on the topic that we're covering tonight, which are the food guidelines. And as you know, that video that we put on in the beginning displayed on the right-hand side, we've got the food pyramid, which if we break down into a macronutrient ratio, it predominates carbohydrates, moderate amount of protein, but we're told to avoid fats. And the reason being is it comes back, if we trace everything back to its roots, it comes back to this guy, Ancel Keys, who in the 1950s released the 7-country study, which said that saturated fat led to cardiovascular disease. But this was a lie, as most of you know. Ancel Keys didn't visit 7 countries. He actually went to 22 or 21, I can never remember. But the other 14 countries disproved his theory, actually showing the opposite, that in fact saturated fats were indeed imperative for health. But we've been told.
Richard, he never went right into the jungle or right into the Arctic either, did he?
No, but you know, it's the 7 countries that did show a correlation. They also consumed high amounts of carbohydrates and other compounds. So the whole thing was falsified from the start, and it's been documented a number of times, even by establishments like the New York Times, that he was bribed in order to remove those 14 countries, which showed a correlation in regards to a benefit between saturated fats and cardiovascular disease. And our whole food pyramid is based on this. It was adopted by the Senate McGovern and then went on to the American Heart Association. And all of our guidelines have come from this. And yet we know that this was falsified. But we've been told to avoid the saturated fats and the seed oils. And this is exactly what we've been doing. The saturated fats, and increase the seed oils. So this is fat consumption from 1909 to 2009. And as you can see, the seed oil consumption has increased massively, while lard and butter and even margarine have come down. So we're doing the things that we're told to do. Now, we're also told to reduce red meat and eat more poultry, and we're told to consume more grains. And we've been doing this also. So we've seen an increase in grains and poultry, while red meats, beef, mutton and lamb, even bacon and ham have remained stable, if not come down. But has this made a difference is the question. And the original, statement in regards to Ansel Keys' research was around cardiovascular disease. Well, no, it hasn't. We've been following, this protocol, since the 1960s, and it hasn't made a difference. And this graph from the 1990s to 2019. Now, bearing in mind, this does, I haven't accounted for in this in regards to increase in population, except I have on the next slide. So if we account for increase in population, it still accounts for a 5.5% increase in cardiovascular disease, which equates to an increase in over 1 million. Now, that may not sound like an awful lot as a percentage, but 5.5% increase when we're following these results, we're following this information to the T. Cardiovascular disease should be going down, not coming up. And it's increased. And what's more is that diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is on the rise. In the 1960s, 1 in 4,000 people in the US suffered with diabetes, and now it's 1 in 10, with 1 in 3 suffering with pre-diabetes. And has it made a difference to our weight? Well, no. In the 1950s, the average size of a woman was size 12. She weighed 9 stone 12, and a man was 11 stone 6 pounds. And now in 2023, the average size of a woman is 16. And is 11 stone 2 pound, and a man is 13.7. So we've been following this advice, and it clearly isn't working. And this is the advice that we've been following: the food pyramid, the eat well plate, all of these things that these establishments give to us. And we covered this in a recent podcast that I did with Zoe Harcombe, and she eloquently pointed out that there's a can of cola on the original, which has been removed since, on the eat well plate, a can of cola. And it doesn't matter whether you are coming from an educated background in regards to health, nutrition, and well-being. We all know that cola is not good for us. But who writes these guidelines? Who's in charge of them? Who's behind them all? Well, it's these kinds of people. So there's a massive conflict of interest. These are the people behind the write-ins of these eat well plates in the food pyramid. People or establishments and companies that serve to earn and make considerable amounts of money. And when we look at these other companies, we've got the likes of Heinz and Unilever and Nestle, who we know are sugar-based companies who make lots of money. But there are companies out there who appear to be having at least our best interests at heart when we look at companies like Weight Watchers and Slim Fast and Jenny Craig, except they don't, because they're owned by these other companies. Heinz owns Weight Watchers, Unilever owns Slim Fast, and so on and so forth. And in fact, if we look at all of the major brands within the world, they're owned by 10 companies. 10 companies control all of these businesses and all of the finances. And what for?
Heinz owns Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's new.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Wow. Shocking, isn't it? Yeah. But I mean, and I don't know why it keeps coming. It's all to do with the money. It's all to do with profit. It's nothing to do with health and well-being. Unfortunately, there's no profit in a healthy patient. And these companies, the sugar industry and the pharmaceutical companies, are owned by the same companies. One group of companies makes us sick, while the other offers us a medication in order to make us better. It's the perfect business model. And unfortunately, that is, the state of our health industry. We are considerably up against it. And this is why things like War on Health are so incredibly important in regards to educating and teaching people about proper health, nutrition, and well-being. And I'm super excited to be coming the weekend. And you probably won't be able to shut me up on Sunday. I messaged Phil recently and said, is it okay if I go over an hour? So
well, mate, you can stay at home now. You've done it all already.
Hey, this is just scratching the surface. I can tell.
I know. And guess what? While you were going through that, I haven't weighed myself for ages. I weighed myself this morning. Guess how much I weighed?
2 stone.
11 stone 6.
Is it? Is it really?
just this morning. I haven't weighed myself for ages.
And
I'll go through that. If anybody wants to see, I'm going to unveil a picture of me winter before last, which I swore I'd never do until I got to the stage that I got up in weight again after it all went horribly wrong, and talking about how that happened. It's a gruesome picture. Amelia saw me putting it in the slides today, and she was like, "Oh my God, what happened there?" And that was, so I put on like, what is it? 35 pounds since then. It was horrific. You should see what I look like, but you'll see that. You have to go to the come to the conference to see me looking like Skeletor. I'm not putting that online. You'll have to come and see that.
Yeah, a preset on Richard. That was I know you obviously condensed it, but for a rudimentary guide on why the food guidelines are absolute trash, that was brilliant. Like an idiot, it's idiot proof. Idiot proof. I did my human nutrition degree dissertation on food guidelines, and actually the aspect of people understanding them. So what I got was about 200 participants, 100 gym members, 100 public people, just general public people, and worked out to work out how many of the nutrition guidelines that they understood. They're quite similar. I mean, the gym people knew a bit more, maybe like 5, 6, 7% more. But largely speaking, it's about 60 to 70% of the guidelines were understood, which tells me, well, okay, they've put all this effort into creating something, but people don't know what they are, which means there's about a 30% gap of people who, assuming they don't follow them anyway, don't have a bloody clue anyway. So it's like, what good does it do? So not only are they misleading people, most people don't know what they are anyway. So they're actually pretty pointless. And people can draw conclusions, say, well, oh, we've been following it or haven't been following it. But the thing is, I think it's a lot of misguidance, like, oh, red meat under this much each week, or, chicken, poultry instead, or fish. It's like, these are quite small levers in the grand scheme of things. What they should be saying is, if it comes in a packet, don't buy it. That's literally it. You can't get too wrong with that. I mean, and if we sort of said, if we eat 70, 80% meat in our diet and the rest of our macronutrients coming from anything else that's unprocessed, broadly speaking, people would be much healthier. That's what they should do. Your plate should be 70, 80% meat, then the rest of it, whatever that's grown on a tree or isn't laden with toxins, perhaps. I think that's a pretty safe bet. But yeah, did anyone else have anything of utility to add to that segment that Richard just mentioned?
One fact that's in my talk that's going to be at the weekend as well, talking about the diabetes percentage, you said it's 10%. You say it's 10% in the US, Richard. It's 7. Yeah, 1 in 10 in the US, 7.5% in the UK. Wow. Except for people who have serious mental health issues, 15%. If you've got serious mental health issues, you are twice as likely to be diabetic in this country. Now, you can't claim any, connection from that. But isn't it interesting that also another fact is that there were no mental asylums in this country until sugar arrived. It was only when sugar started to become a staple in this country that we actually ever had the first asylums as well. So I'm wondering whether there's a connection between
I'm convinced
sugar and carbs and mental health.
I'm convinced, because when you look at food addiction, for example, and how the neurotransmitters are processed within the brain, and even methylation, the methylation is essential for life. Insulin resistance in the context, in the basic context as we understand it, sugar addiction and the body's inability to create and methylate and create these neurotransmitters directly impacts, these pathways. I'm going to cover this in a little bit more detail in the talk, actually, on Sunday, on the neurotransmitters. I've left methylation out. I thought I didn't want to go too deep. But again, we can cover that if we had more time. I'm sure I'll add the slides to the end, and if there's time or maybe some spare, we can go into that. But I'm 100% convinced that it is directly correlated.
Yeah.
Excellent. Ben, did you want to pick the next question out of our list? I'm struggling to choose. I'm stuck for choice.
We'll go with, should I supplement iodine if my salt has none?
We get iodine from milk and eggs. I don't know. a lot of people seem to take it. I don't know. I mean, Phil knows probably a bit more about this than I do for sure. Phil, what's your take on iodine and supplementation?
Well, you know, I am useless anecdote man. It's just I don't really know completely what's going on with it. I just know that a lot of us are iodine deficient, and there are certain things that get into the thyroid, like halides, oxalates, whatever, that block the uptake of iodine. And once there are protocols to get rid of that with sort of borax and salt loading and all that kind of thing. But your salt really shouldn't have added iodine in it. It should be good grey Celtic sea salt or some good salt like that. I would avoid the pink Himalayan after, you know, you understand how much fluoride, deuterium, sort of plastics, bomb blasting, you know, dynamite blasting residue, all that kind of thing. It's not the great thing that we always thought it was cracked up to be. But iodine supplementation is a really difficult thing. Like, you know, some people say that you shouldn't take iodine because it's very dangerous for the thyroid, particularly if you've got Hashimoto's or Graves. Now, I've seen it be incredibly beneficial with that. I think at some point, don't take this as serious advice. Go and do your research. But there are certain interesting things that I've seen because my missus has Graves. And there are certain interesting things I've seen from people who say that I took a little bit of iodine and my thyroid went crazy and it was awful. And to me, this is almost like if you got a really muddy car and you squirt a little bit of water on, rub it with a cloth or whatever, it also spreads around and gets worse. But if you get a fire hose on it and blast all the mud off, it's gone. And we have a good friend called Carnivore who runs a Facebook group called Help with Iodine. Don't expect to get an answer at the moment because he's been banned from Facebook for 6 months for speaking the truth about something or other. But he's really, really knowledgeable about this. And he gave us some great advice, and I've seen him give other people some great advice. And I have seen people having huge doses, the fire hose sort of levels of iodine, like starting off at 180 milligrams of Lugol's iodine twice, 3 times a day, because the body will generally excrete what it doesn't need. It's not dangerous. And they've been sorting out their thyroid issues. Now, this isn't always the case, and it's a really controversial issue. So I don't know. Do you absolutely need to supplement iodine? I don't know. I should talk to somebody, you know, like Jonathan or Richard or whatever, who understand about doing the tests to find out whether you are actually deficient. But if you are, sometimes the real mega doses can hit the spot, whereas the small doses can't. But there's nothing wrong with putting a couple of drops of iodine in water a day. You know, that it really won't do any harm if you're healthy, and it might just boost up the deficiencies you have. Do I bother? No, I have done from time to time. But I just forget about all that stuff. I can't be asked. I forget about all of that sort of supplement shit and just eat meat, you know. But if you really need it and you know you need it, and just you know, go to somebody like Richard who understands what you need and how long you need it for and that kind of thing. And then brilliant. But with iodine, have seen incredible results with mega doses. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that. Am I mad? Am I killing people? My missus endocrinologist said that yes, I was. But in my experience, we haven't been killing anyone.
There is also a very simple home test that you can do. Just get some Lugol's iodine, paint a patch on your arm or something like that, and if it's gone 24 hours later, then your body's soaked it in, and maybe you could try supplementing. If it's still there after like 48 hours, then your body's fine. I don't know if you guys.
It's a good test. But also there's a comment here, says the iodine doctor that was recently interviewed by Dr. Berry uses around 50 milligrams to help folks get healthy and then drops it down for long term. This was probably Dr. Brownstein, I'm guessing. He was probably on there. But yes, these iodine protocols can be amazing, particularly for women with hormonal driven stuff. So like there's a video on my YouTube channel of my mum's breast cancer reversing. Put her on a carnivore diet. We did a lot of things. A lot of them didn't work. The cannabis got her too stoned, all of that kind of thing. But And you know, a 93-year-old who's never been stoned before is really quite hilarious. But we had to pack that in, and we tried so many things. But then when we gave her I gave her this iodine protocol, and it wasn't that much. It wasn't as much as I would give her these days, but we got lucky, and it reversed her breast cancer, along with a carnivore diet, throwing her out in the sun, making sure she had blue blockers on at night, all of those kind of things. And you can see a picture there of the tumor reversing. And I've seen other things like that, particularly with women with like fibrocystic breast syndrome. And Jack was on about that. Jack Cruz was on about that, where he was just a medical student, and some doc, you know, somebody came in with really painful breasts. He said, the sort of consultant or whatever said, just paint the breast with a load of iodine, then we'll go back and examine her in like half an hour or something, and there wasn't any pain. And we were painting that on the tumor as well with my mum. So, you know, there are serious uses for it. I think it's really, really powerful, actually, but kind of know what you're doing, and if you really need it. That's not that everybody needs to swallow a bottle of Lugol's every day.
Nice one. Should we move on to the next question? There's two here I really want to get answered. So they're in the Star chat, guys. So one of them is about biocyclic vegan agriculture, and the other one is about a short list of studies. Yeah, so this one. I was interested to hear what Lee thought about this one, actually, because it's definitely something I think he might have looked into. Unmute, I think.
Biocyclic vegan agriculture. I mean, it's all symbiotic. That's the thing. We want to get back to the good old fashioned way of doing things. It's modern agriculture now. This is just destroying everything. So we want to get back to animals grazing and plants, you know, all of this stuff that just took care of itself. In human intervention in so many ways is just like regress. I don't really know specifically what biocyclic vegan agriculture is, but to me, you know, it's all about symbiosis of animals and plants. Like everything plays their part in maintaining the health of the planet, and also, you know, providing the right nourishment for every species appropriate substrate. So I don't know if you guys can weigh in on this biocyclic vegan agriculture. I'm not too sure, but
go on, Ben.
The answer is regenerative farming, however you swing it.
Yeah, biocyclic.
Ben would know.
I don't really know. I mean, you know, there's biodynamic growing, which is to do with the impact of the moon and the you know, on the seasons and stuff like that, about what phases of the moon you plant stuff and germinate and whatever. There's veganic agriculture, and I've actually did a blog post on that back in 2018. If you just type in Ben Hunt veganic, and there have been quite a lot of experiments, like Ian Tolhurst down south. He's got a veganic farm where the idea is that he doesn't import any manure, he doesn't import any bone meal or fish blood or any of this stuff that people often add to improve their soils. And of course, there's no animals working the soil. It's all kind of done by hand. So very labor intensive, but I think 2/3 of Ian's, they call him Tolly's land, I think 2/3 of it is devoted to the growing of willow to make mulch to add to the soil. And that's simply because he's refusing to import manure, right? But yeah, the bottom line of that is there's no such thing as veganic agriculture. And quite honestly, guys, there's no such thing as vegan either. It's an idea and it's a myth, because the soil has trillions of living things in it. It's made up of dead things. The soil is partly living stuff and mostly dead stuff, and some minerals and some water. That's it. You know, everything that lives dies. Everything that lives eventually, you know, finds its way back into the food chain through one method or another. We become on the land. It's ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So the idea that anything that you eat comes death-free is bollocks. So is it possible to grow food without explicitly using animals? No, there's a guy in Canada. I can't remember his name now. He's in Quebec, and he's got a thing on his wall. He's got this market garden, and he's got a photo on his wall that says "Employé du mois," employee of the month, and it's a photo of an earthworm. because the earthworms do all the work on the farm. They do more work than anyone else because they're constantly processing and improving the soil. There is no getting away from the fact that plants and animals and all of life is bound together in this incredibly complex web of life and death, and you don't get to opt out. So that's my philosophy on it now. I used to be really fascinated in this stuff a few years ago. Went to a bunch of conferences about it, but it's all much simpler now, right? For every life, there's one death, and actually, death isn't even a problem in itself. The real problem is lifelessness. If you kill, and this is what modern agriculture does, by the way, plant agriculture I'm talking about, you kill every species in a large area except for the one that you want to allow to grow. And it's the stupidest thing that humans ever did, in my view. That's all I have to say on that.
Fair. Does anyone else have any takes on it at all?
It's just human intervention mistake, isn't it? It's just to think that we're smarter than the body, so we lower this with the drug, or to think we know better than nature, so we have to come along and we'll clear this land that's got thriving with life. When I go down the farm, right, just started back on my milk. When I go down the farm, I'm only having a couple of glasses. It's beautiful there. You've got all this life. I see birds of prey. I see little hares running about. You've got goats, you've got sheep, you've got cows grazing. So much insect. I get bugs all around me. It's just crazy. You go to any kind of monocrop or anything, it's just dead. There's nothing there. And so it's horrific, the sight of what we're trying to do when we intervene as humans, thinking that, we can progress. It's all regress. We're destroying human health, the planet, the natural ecosystem. So to me, like what you're saying, Ben, vegan doesn't exist. No life without death. Life by definition is death. You know, some stuff had to die for me to be alive. Then I will give back when I die, and vice versa. Hence, cycle of life, and that's it. You know,
it's spot on. I think this whole veganism comes from a fear of death. I think they're frightened of death, and so they sort of project it onto the animals. And death is fine. It's fine because you can see them all getting obsessed with longevity, not health span. You know, the blue zones, they all live longer. Well, obviously we know they don't. But, if they do, they still eat a load of meat. So it's all bullshit. But, you know, this obsession with health span, I think it's just this weird sort of fear of death. There's one quick one here from Arlene Blackwood here. She says, way to go, Phil, helping your mum with iodine. I'm allergic to it. What can I take instead of iodine? Can I just do a quick one on that? A lot of people
I've answered that question already. Milk and eggs.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Instead of it. But early on in the Big Fat Challenge, we had a load of people going on iodine protocols, and they would get all sorts of weird reactions, particularly great sort of rashes. You know, we had some great pics of sort of women getting these rashes across here and across their chest and arms and breasts and whatever. And just stop it for a bit. It tends to disappear, and then start up the iodine protocol again if you're going to do it. So some people think they're allergic to it when they're not exactly allergic to it. There's something that happens with whatever iodine's pushing out, whether it's the halides or something, I don't know, that can cause rashes, all sorts of things. It depends on the allergic symptoms, but I don't know whether anybody's actually allergic to it. I think that it's just a sort of, and I sound like a vegan here, I'm sorry, it's some kind of a detox thing, and then stop it and reintroduce and see what happens if you want to do an iodine protocol, which is not necessary for everybody, but there we go. Just caught my eye. Sorry.
Iodine is a big old molecule, and it takes up a lot of space. And if it's going into your body, it's going to try and knock something else out quite easily. It's going to quite easily do that. Like you said, it's a halogen on the elements table, so it's quite a big one. So if something else is taking up space, it's going to find a way to sort of shunt it out of the way, which means something else will always happen downstream. I don't think it's fair to say the person's allergic to it. I mean, I could put vitamin C all over my skin and I'd get a rash. I'm not allergic to vitamin C. It's just my body's got too much of something at one point in time. So obviously, like the precautionary measure is just to use it as needed and not use it when it's not needed. I think people try these protocols. I've been privy to like a lot of information about different protocols by naturopaths and people online about different things. And I'm like, everyone's like, oh, do this for 4 weeks. You have to do it for 4 weeks. And I'm like, what if you need 27 days? What if that did the job? And I think that's quite a overly exhaustive process. That one day could be the straw that broke the camel's back, sort of thing. I think that's part of what people do, is they try to get obsessed with this end result and think, my mate did it and my mate cured this and sorted this out. But the reality is, there might not be you. Our bodies are all very different. We've all got different start points and end points. My diet wouldn't work for most people, and vice versa. If Phil tried my diet, he'd be in the toilet all day and probably be sick all the time. And I don't know, if his joints would swell up like 10 inches. If I did Richard's diet, I wouldn't feel right. I'd be nauseous from all the lamb. So there's not really a hard rule, but as long as we're eating predominantly meat and animal foods, I don't think we could get it too far wrong, in my opinion. There's one question that I think is quite important. It's actually imperative to this talk. So it's from Adam Caradus, and it is, what's the best short list of studies which can be used as a great on-the-spot counter-argument for people who doubt what you're saying about carnivore benefits? We could probably all chime in this one. Richard, can you think of anything off the top of your head? I know there's loads, but...
What about the whole of human history?
What, 3.5 billion years? That's a good one. That works.
Yeah,
Richard, what's your take?
I've got a folder full of RCTs. Maybe we should publish those within the groups or something. But there's, it's all down to interpretation also. I mean, one of the biggest arguments in regards to not consuming meat is the 2015 IARC report that says red meat causes cancer, when in fact, if you actually read through the studies, not one of those studies actually shows any correlation. There was 800 that were put forward, of which 29 were considered, and only 14 made the conclusion. I think it was 8 of those showed no correlation with red meat and cancer. The other 6, I think two of those 6 were done on rodents, where they were injected with cancer-causing chemicals and fed red meat, and they still didn't develop any cancer. So why they put those forward, who knows? There was one study basically at the end of this whole paper that showed any correlation, and that was done by the Seventh-day Adventists of America, who are a religious group who advocate for a vegan lifestyle. And even within their own study, these people who developed cancer were type 2 diabetic and consumed, cola and ate pizza and so on and so forth. So the reality is, from that one study that people will throw against you, I think, it's understanding how to read the studies and break them down is the best counter argument, because we can all supply, studies which will have a counter argument. But if you can break down somebody's original study, then that's the best defense or even attack that you can have. And that is a massive paper, the IARC report in 2015. Basically, the results is that nothing within that study actually showed any correlation whatsoever. And that's the reality. I think if you can break down these studies, that is going to be your best defense. There's lots of other studies in regards to cholesterol and things. There's a big study on the BMJ which covers over 92,000 participants and shows 68,000 participants, and shows an inverse association between high LDL and all-cause mortality, representing 92% of the participants. That's readily available. There's lots of others. The Minnesota coronary artery experiment, which was carried out in mental hospitals in America. And again, that was hidden for, I think, the better part of 60 years, because it showed the opposite to what they were trying to show, that lower cholesterol actually improved longevity and didn't... higher cholesterol improved longevity. And they were trying to prove that vegetable oils lowered cholesterol and led to a positive result, but it actually showed the opposite. It did indeed show that the vegetable oil lowered serum cholesterol, but that also showed higher risk of all-cause mortality. There's lots of studies. I think that's the best argument that we can have, is debunking the main studies. There was one a friend sent to me today, a really good athlete friend of mine who's one of the best Ironman athletes in the UK, and I've been training with him a little bit lately. Some study from Harvard University. It wasn't a study. There was no references in there at all. It was an opinion piece. I couldn't see any references. There was no reference to any point of reference. There was no data in there. And that's what we got to be careful of as well, is that a lot of these things are opinion pieces. Many of the research papers are also epidemiology studies. Again, in that the IARC report, the 14 papers put forward were all epidemiology studies. Not one of them was an RCT. The only 2 RCTs that they put in there were the ones that they injected the rats with a known carcinogen, and that actually showed no cause of cancer anyway. These papers are incredibly misleading, and it is a minefield. You know, we can always combat one study with another, but that just leads down a rabbit hole. The best defense and argument is breaking down other people's studies, I think.
Richard, you glitched a bit there, and you mentioned Harvard. Were you talking about the Harvard carnivore diet study?
Quite possibly. Let me see. My friend sent it to me today. Let's take a look.
Because there was one recently on about, I don't know, 2,000 carnivores or something.
Yeah, 2,000 carnivores, a survey study with something like 90% of all participants coming off medications, having disease put to remission. But what we've seen is, like, even though it's a survey, it's like, well, no other diet survey can show that. We can't look at a vegan diet or a paleo diet that's been surveyed and say 90+% of people have put this into remission. It just doesn't happen. So although it is obviously a survey, it's not hard science. It is quite overwhelming in my opinion. Yeah, Richard, what's the study about?
It was Foods That Fight Inflammation by Harvard Health Publishing, Harvard Medical School. My reply to my mate was, look, I'm not even going to waste my time going back to it because it wasn't even worth replying to. The sad situation is that quite often you get involved in it's not an argument. You try to go back, at least this is my way of thinking. Somebody posts something like this and, you know, you can poke holes. So you go back with the science and you explain why it's flawed. And then you reference other studies and they come back with stupid comments. They haven't even looked at the studies. They don't acknowledge the comments you've made. They miss, you know, the scientific data that you've just put in there, and they just come back with more. You cannot change some people's minds. I think all we can do is put the information out there as we find it. And people need to come to us, you know, and other people need to spread that word, because it just doesn't do anything when we get involved with arguments on these groups. I've taken up full days debating people back and forth, and the arguments, you can't refute the argument. Everything that I've put in there is solid. All studies referenced, heavily evidence-based. You know how deep I like to go into the science, and they just come back with, you know, you're a knob and so on. It's like, you're a knob and you're wrong, you know?
They end up really swearing in full caps, don't they? They get aggressive, and then they say you're so aggressive as a carnivore. It's really odd. You can't do it. But do you know why I do it? Sometimes if I see something pop up and I'm not that busy, I'll do it because there's other people watching. And quite often after a conversation like that, with you know you're not going to get through to the militant one that's sending you death threats and thinking, you know, saying your kids should be taken away and all that kind of thing. But there's other people watching who are kind of sick. You know, there's a less militant vegan in there somewhere who's following that, and then or a dietitian. They're almost as bad, aren't they? Because they've got qualifications and you haven't, all that crap. But that carnivore diet study recently, the Harvard one. So it's weird, isn't it? So you get all these institutions that kind of do conflicting studies. That's what amuses me. And so how are you going to decide between them? Harvard have said that, you know, meat's inflammatory. Harvard have done a carnivore diet study to show that, you know, they weren't even that strict. They were still eating dairy and eggs and stuff like that. If they'd have done a full fatty beef and lamb study for 90 days, I think it would have blown everything else out of the water. Well, this one did anyway, even though some of them were only like 80, 90% carnivore, and they were reversing pretty much everything. And then people go, oh, well, it was only this amount of people. It was only for that amount of time. But no, this is shown finally in a study what the whole of human history has shown. That's why I love Mary Ruddick's stuff, you know, because people come to me, and I'm constantly sharing my podcast with her, because these people who sit in some high-rise flat, who've never been to a farm, they've certainly never been anywhere near the Amazon or the Arctic, and they go, oh, well, you know, studies show that a plant-based diet is best. And it just doesn't equate. It's like Anthony Chaffee is saying it all the time, isn't it? Don't care what a study says. if it doesn't bear out in real life, it's bollocks. It's absolutely worthless. And then they go, well, it's all useless anecdotes. I know, it's fun, isn't it? It's like, Richard, it's like wobbling a tooth when you're a kid, isn't it? It hurts, but you can't stop doing it, and you keep on doing it. And that's what it's like talking to vegans. But there's always somebody else watching there, you know, and you get somebody else come up and go, oh, do you know what? My arse has exploded. Can I talk to you?
Surprisingly, that athlete that I mentioned is an ex-vegan. So he came to one of my talks and came up to me after and asked, you know, where he can get quality beef liver from. A year later, he went down the low carb ketogenic route. Now he's predominantly carnivore, and his athletic performance has increased by something like 12%, which for an athlete at his level is phenomenal.
But and he's more vegan than he ever was.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, what I'm going to do soon is I managed to organise a time with Bart Kay, who is trained in statistical analysis to a much greater degree than I am, to a PhD level, not a Bachelor of Science level. I'm going to go for a study with him on one of these like typical things which vegans always put on online sort of thing. I'm going to go for it bit by bit by bit. The problem is most people will probably watch that video and be like, yeah, but, and throw another study which says the exact same thing but in a different slant. But what I will say is when you guys go to study online, you read the abstract. The abstract is just a brief summary of what the interpretation of the data is. It's not factual in most cases. When you go to conclusion, what you need to do is scribble that out and write opinion. A conclusion in a study is always an opinion. And what you'll find is if you actually look at the raw data, sometimes it's not what comes true. Like Rich just said, exactly what Rich just said about whatever you just mentioned about a study, and what they found it didn't come to fruition. You know, it didn't make sense when you actually looked at it. Now, does anyone have any sort of last comments about what's going on, maybe over this weekend or anything else before we wrap this up? Because I'm aware of the time.
Do a quick one on the vegan one there. If anybody out there argues with vegans, there is a very, very common meme that they put up all the time about teeth, you know, and they've got, here's a carnivore, here's carnivore teeth, here's omnivore teeth, here's herbivore teeth, and humans are obviously herbivore, and they have that kind of 5 columns or whatever. If you go to my Phil Escott YouTube channel and look up a video that Ben amusingly called Comedy Science Appreciation Corner, Ben and I did a video completely debunking that meme. So the vegans always hit you with that meme. Eventually in an argument, they'll come up with that meme. Put our video up, because we've gone through everything of the whole business of teeth and digestive system and all that absolute nonsense, and debunk that, because you'll get hit with that a lot. So, you know, we've got a lot of good hand grenades for the vegan predictable arguments. Happen every time.
They better start eating their own poop then, eh?
Exactly, yeah. I say the perfect example. Eat 50 pounds of dry vegetation and your own poo.
Yeah.
See, in fact, it was only this morning I mentioned to some particularly militant vegan the concept of coprophagy. Of course, they'd never heard of it, but I was recommending it to them. I think I was being very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Nice one. So just as a reminder, guys, it is coming up this weekend. Time to buy your ticket to Ben and Phil's event with all of the guys that are on the panel, apart from me and Lee, will be up online to look at. I'm going to just share the screen again quickly, so you guys know where it's at. It's at thebigfatchallenge.com/events. It'll be under this thing here. And the code is, I believe, GB Carnivore. And they've now made it so you can actually access all this stuff even just for the day, I believe. So if you can't make it for 2 days, you can't get a hotel, you can't book a time off work, you can still just pop down for 1 day and see what's going on. And the program is all on there, all transparent, so you know what you're paying for, which is, I think, brilliant. You know exactly what you're going for, so I'd recommend checking that one out. Any last comments, guys?
Thank you. Yeah, we've got, well, you mentioned accommodation, hotels. You don't need to find a hotel. We got rooms there. We've booked out the whole of Cliff College pretty much. And so, yeah, come down. But visit the page. Go and visit that page and just listen to the podcast with all the speakers and whet your appetite and see what we're doing there. See these amazing people that we've got coming down. And you know, yeah, Ben, anything else to say on the conference?
Just come and see us. It's going to be a great weekend.
Cool.
Excellent. All right, cheers, guys. Thanks for listening in. All your questions. Appreciate you joining. We'll see you all next week.
Cheers.